My mom tried to force me to accept my sister's crime as my own. When I refused, she screamed that she should have aborted me. I walked away. That was 8 years ago. Today, she called me sobbing. This started when my sister was 18 and was my mom's golden child. My dad thankfully has a good head on his shoulders and always called my sister out on her poop. But my mom's interference always meant my sister got off easy anyway. This is what happened. My parents decided to take a vacation to ski in Aspen and let my sister watch the house for them. They told her no parties, but that was a rule she straight up ignored. A day after our parents left, my sister started sending out invites to a party, and she was promising free alcohol. I didn't see the post just yet, but my sister called me and asked me to go get alcohol for her party because I was over 21 and could legally buy it. She also wanted me to pay for it and said she'd invite me to the party and introduce me to an easy girl in order to pay me back. I told her that I wasn't going to break the law to make her happy. She should never have told people her party would have alcohol. She screamed at me over the phone that I was ruining her life and that she couldn't take back the invites now that they were all over her FB. I looked at her post and facepalmed. I told her that what she did was really stupid and she and her friends were all underage, so it's illegal. She tried to say it'd only be illegal if I narked on them. I said I wouldn't narc, but I wasn't going to buy her booze either. She screamed at me some more, so I hung up. Well, that night, my sister had the party, and someone called the police for underage drinking. The cops showed up around midnight and started checking IDs. Everyone scattered, but they caught my sister red-handed with a bottle. Turns out she actually broke into Dad's liquor cabinet and thought it'd be better to frame me for her crime. Police came and arrested me at my apartment the day after the party. They seemed already convinced I was guilty, but I willingly cooperated. At the station, I told them the whole story and got them to look at my sister's FB post. Thankfully, there were a few people who listened, but I still had to sit the night out in a cell while my parents were called. My mom and dad flew back home overnight and bailed us both out. But my mom tried to make my dad leave me in jail because my sister had told them her lies as well. My dad took the time to talk to me and look at my sister's FB, so he believed me. This caused a fight between him and my mom. When they got home, my dad discovered my sister had broken into his liquor cabinet and spoke to police on my behalf. My mom, however, still wanted the blame to fall on me because, as she put it, the charges were ruining her baby's future. But my innocence was proven by CCTV showing my car and I when I left work and arrived home, and it never moved from the apartment parking lot. My sister's story that I had driven out and gotten the alcohol fell apart. I wasn't seen at any liquor store. My bank showed no alcohol purchases, and my car was never at my parents' house. After being confronted with these facts, my sister changed her story to saying I gave her alcohol at my apartment, but her car never showed up there either. My sister finally had to give up on her lies. My mom still tried to convince me to take the fall, coming to my apartment and demanding I tell police it was my fault. When I refused, she went from demanding to begging, even getting on her knees. I said I'd rather live poor than have that felony on my record. She threw a huge fit, throwing things, and I threatened to call police. She left cussing me out and said she should have aborted me. I called my dad immediately and he was insanely mad, threatening divorce if she didn't make things right. She had signed a prenup and had no choice but to agree to counseling. In family counseling, I called her out on always believing my sister's lies, reading a list I'd compiled from the past decade. My sister, proven beyond doubt to be a liar and manipulator, shut down completely. My mom's forced apology was fake and uncomfortable. When my sister went to court, my mom begged the judge for leniency. Her lawyer got a deal if she pleaded guilty. A huge fine mom paid and probation instead of jail time. Dad also made her get therapy, where she was diagnosed as a narcissist. After college, she left for California and got a job in LA that Dad helped her get. We haven't spoken in years. My parents' marriage became one on paper only. They sleep in separate rooms. Recently, my sister called bragging about becoming assistant manager. I pointed out I now manage one of Dad's businesses and will inherit everything. She called our parents crying it wasn't fair, but they reminded her that framing me and ghosting them after they'd paid for her defense in college wasn't fair either. I told them that framing me and ghosting them after they'd paid for her defense in college wasn't fair either. My parents finally saw the truth about who she'd become. They had nothing left they wanted to give. We can't see anything now, but we don't really care. My mom called me and gave me a long-awaited, more sincere apology for what happened so long ago, especially for that day she tried to make me take the blame for my sister. Years without my sister in her life, and the recent incident has made her realize more than ever that she was a terrible mother to us both, and she can't undo anything. But she wanted to at least say she was incredibly sorry and that she loved me. She's just been too ashamed to really show it. She's now finally looking into therapy, and she's even making an effort to spend more time with my dad, like in the old days. I stared at my phone after hanging up with Mom, feeling something shift inside me. For years, I'd wanted this moment, this acknowledgement, but now that it was here, I didn't know what to do with it. My apartment suddenly felt too quiet, too small. I grabbed my keys and headed out, needing to move, to think. The drive to Dad's office building took 20 minutes through downtown traffic. I parked in my designated spot, the one with my name on it, right next to Dad's. The security guard nodded as I walked through the lobby. Everyone knew me here now, not as the boss's kid who got framed, but as the manager who'd turned around 3 failing locations in 2 years. Dad's secretary waved me through without buzzing him. I knocked anyway and found him hunched over spreadsheets, glasses sliding down his nose. He looked up and smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. The stress of maintaining a broken marriage showed in every new line on his face. "We need to talk about Mom," I said, closing the door behind me. He set down his pen and leaned back. "She called you too?" I nodded and took the chair across from his desk. She apologized. Really apologized this time. Said she's starting therapy. Dad rubbed his temples. She told me the same thing this morning. Even suggested we try couples counseling again. I couldn't hide my surprise. After all these years of sleeping in separate rooms, they were considering considering working on things? The irony wasn't lost on me. My sister's latest manipulation had somehow pushed Mom toward the self-reflection she'd avoided for decades. What are you going to do? I asked. Dad stood and walked to the window overlooking the city. Your mother and I had something good once before. He didn't need to finish. Before my sister learned she could play them against each other. Before Mom chose favorites. Before that night changed everything. I think I owe it to both of us to try, he continued. But I need to know she's serious this time, not just reacting to your sister's latest drama. I understood his hesitation. Mom's previous attempts at change had always been temporary, lasting just long enough for the crisis to pass. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number with a California area code. I almost ignored it, but something made me look. It was a photo of my sister at what looked like a company party, arm around a man who appeared to be her boss. The message read, "Thought you should know what your sister is really up to. She's sleeping her way to the top and bragging about it. Some of us who actually work for our positions are sick of it." I showed Dad the message. His face darkened. She never learns, does she? I pocketed my phone, deciding not to engage. My sister's choices weren't my problem anymore, but I worried about what would happen when her house of cards inevitably collapsed. Would she come running back, expecting us to clean up her mess again? The next few weeks passed in a blur of normalcy. I focused on work, expanding our client base and implementing new systems. Mom started therapy twice a week and even convinced Dad to join her for some sessions. They began having dinner together again. Awkward at first, but gradually more natural. Then the calls started. First, it was blocked numbers hanging up when I answered. Then heavy breathing. Finally, a distorted voice. "Stop ignoring your sister. She needs help." I changed my number, but somehow they found the new one within days. I installed security cameras at my apartment after finding my door unlocked one evening, though nothing was missing. The building manager swore no one had requested access to my unit. Dad hired a private investigator who traced the calls to various burner phones purchased in LA. Mom's therapist suggested a family session, just the three of us. I agreed reluctantly, not wanting to derail her progress. We sat in a circle in the therapist's beige office, the air thick with years of unspoken resentments. "Tell me about your relationship with your daughter," the therapist prompted Mom. "Not your son, your daughter." Mom's hands twisted in her lap. "I don't know her anymore. The person calling and demanding money, threatening to ruin our business if we don't help her. That's not my baby." "But she is," I interjected. "She's exactly who you raised her to be. Someone who believes the world owes her everything, and consequences don't apply." The therapist held up a hand. "Let's explore that. How do you think your parenting contributed to her current behavior?" Mom broke down then. Really broke down. Not the manipulative tears I'd seen before, but raw, ugly sobs. She talked about her own childhood, her mother who'd favored her brother, how she'd sworn her daughter would never feel less than. But in trying to prevent that pain, she'd created a monster. Dad reached over and took her hand. It was the first time I'd seen them touch in years. "We can't change the past," he said, "but we can stop enabling her now." The therapist nodded. "Boundaries aren't punishment, they're love." That night, my sister called from a different number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. She was crying, but it sounded different from her usual manipulation. "They're going to fire me," she said. "Someone sent HR screenshots of me bragging about sleeping with my boss. It's not true, but he's married, and they believe I'm a threat." I stayed silent, letting her talk. "I need money for a lawyer. Just a loan. I'll pay you back, I swear." The old me might have felt guilty, might have considered helping, but I thought about Mom in therapy, Dad trying to rebuild his marriage, the peace we'd finally found. "I can't help you," I said. "You need to handle this yourself." She exploded, screaming about family loyalty and how I'd ruined her life. I hung up and blocked the number. An hour later, Dad called. She'd tried him too, then Mom. We'd all said no. The next morning, I arrived at work to find police cars in the parking lot. My stomach dropped, fearing my sister had escalated to something serious, but they weren't there for me. Someone had vandalized the building overnight, spray painting accusations about my family on the walls. The security footage showed a figure in a hoodie, but their face was obscured. We filed a report, but I knew it was her. The desperate actions of someone who'd never faced real consequences finally hitting rock bottom. Dad wanted to press charges if they could prove it was her, but Mom begged him not to. One daughter with a record was enough, she said. Instead, we increased security and installed better cameras. I varied my routes to work and home. It felt like preparing for war with someone who'd once been family. The investigator kept tabs on her movements, reporting that she'd been fired and was couch surfing with various acquaintances. 3 months passed without incident. Mom and Dad renewed their vows in a small ceremony with just me and a few close friends. Watching them exchange rings again, I felt hope for the first time in years. Maybe broken things could be fixed if people were willing to do the work. Then she showed up. I was leaving the gym when I saw her waiting by my car. She looked terrible, thin and hollow-eyed. Designer clothes replaced with thrift store finds. Part of me wanted to run, but I forced myself to walk steadily toward her. "Please," she said. "I just need to talk." I kept my hand on my phone, ready to call for help. "You have 5 minutes." She launched into a story about being blacklisted in LA, how everyone had turned against her, how it wasn't fair. The same old song with new verses. "I need to come home," she finished, "just until I get back on my feet. I'll apologize to Mom and Dad, go to therapy, whatever you want." I studied her face, searching for sincerity. All I saw was calculation. "You burned every bridge," I said. "You framed me for a crime. You tried to destroy our family. You ghosted everyone who loved you. And now you want to come back because you have nowhere else to go?" She tried tears then, but they didn't move me anymore. "The answer is no. Don't contact any of us again. If you do, we'll get a restraining order." I got in my car and drove away, watching in the mirror as she stood in the parking lot, fists clenched. That night, I told my parents about the encounter. Mom cried, but she supported the decision. Dad had already started the paperwork for a protective order. It felt like closing a chapter we should have ended years ago. Months turned into a year. year. The harassment stopped, though we heard through the grapevine that she'd moved to Texas, then Florida, burning bridges wherever she went. Mom and Dad's relationship continued to heal. They sold the big house full of bad memories and bought a smaller one near the beach. I met someone, a woman who understood complicated families and didn't judge me for mine. We took things slow, but it felt right. For the first time, I was building something that had nothing to do with my sister's shadow. One day, Dad called me into his office. He'd decided to retire early, wanted to travel with Mom while they were still healthy. The business would be mine sooner than expected. We spent hours going over transition plans, and I felt the weight of responsibility settling on my shoulders. But it was a good weight, earned through years of hard work and integrity. The lawyer contacted us one last time. My sister had been arrested for fraud in Miami, trying to con elderly people out of their savings. She'd listed us as emergency contacts. We declined to get involved. She'd made her choices, and we'd made ours. At Mom and Dad's farewell party before their first big trip, Mom pulled me aside. "Thank you," she said, "for not giving up on us, for showing me what I'd become, for being the son I didn't deserve, but somehow got anyway." I hugged her tight, feeling the last of my resentment dissolve. As I watched my parents drive away in their RV, ready for their adventure, I thought about how differently things could have gone if my sister hadn't thrown that party, if she hadn't tried to frame me, if Mom had enabled her one more time. But she had, and here we were, our family, smaller but stronger. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is let them face the consequences of their actions, and sometimes those consequences save everyone else. I went back to my life, my work, my relationship. The business thrived under my leadership. Mom and Dad sent postcards from everywhere, looking happier than they had in decades. And my sister became what she'd always been to me, a cautionary tale about what happens when love becomes enabling and consequences come too late. The golden child who lost her shine, while the scapegoat inherited everything, not through manipulation or lies, but through patience, integrity, and the hard choice to stop being anyone's victim. Our family was finally free, and it had taken losing one member to save the rest. But that's the thing about toxic people. Sometimes the only way to heal is to cut them out completely, no matter how much it hurts. And in the end, we were all better for it. I thought that was the end of it. I really did. 6 months into running Dad's business full-time, with my parents sending weekly updates from their travels, life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. My girlfriend Sarah and I had moved in together, and work was thriving under my leadership. Then the first package arrived at the office. No return address, just my name scrawled across brown paper. Inside was a photo of me leaving the gym, taken from across the street. On the back, my sister's handwriting, "You can't hide forever." I threw it away, but more packages followed. Photos of Sarah at her job, of my parents' RV at a campground, of Dad's business locations, each one with increasingly threatening messages. I hired security for Sarah and warned my parents, but they were thousands of miles away. The police said without direct threats of violence, there wasn't much they could do. Then employees started quitting. 3 managers at different locations, all in the same week. When I called to ask why, they were vague, mentioning better opportunities. But something felt off. I dug deeper and discovered they'd all received calls warning them the business was about to collapse, that I was involved in illegal activities, that they should get out while they could. My sister had found a new way to attack. She couldn't hurt me directly, so she was targeting everything I'd built. I spent sleepless nights trying to counter her sabotage, reassuring employees, strengthening security protocols. Sarah started getting calls at work too, anonymous tips that I was cheating, that I had a criminal record, that she should leave me. She didn't believe them, but the constant harassment was wearing on her. One morning, I arrived at the main office to find chaos. Our computer systems had been hacked overnight, customer data corrupted, financial records scrambled. The IT team worked frantically to restore backups, while I fielded angry calls from clients. In the mess of deleted files, they found one document left behind, a rambling manifesto about how I'd stolen everything from my sister, how she deserved what I had. The cyber attack cost us 2 major contracts and nearly $100,000 in recovery costs. Dad called from somewhere in Montana, worried about the business he'd spent decades building. I assured him I had it under control, but doubt crept into my voice. Maybe I wasn't ready for this responsibility. Maybe my sister would win after all. That's when things escalated beyond harassment. Sarah's car tires were slashed in our apartment parking lot. Security footage showed a figure in dark clothes, face covered, but the build was right. The next week, someone broke into her parents' house while they were at dinner. Nothing stolen but family photos scattered across the floor with Sarah's face cut out of each one. Sarah was terrified, and I couldn't blame her. This wasn't what she'd signed up for. We fought about it, her suggesting maybe we should take a break until things calmed down. I begged her to stay, promised I'd fix this, but I could see the fear in her eyes every time she left for work. The breaking point came when one of our delivery trucks was sabotaged. The driver noticed the brake lines had been cut just before getting on the highway. If he hadn't checked, it could have unalived him and others. That crossed a line from harassment to attempted unaliving. I knew then that my sister wouldn't stop until she destroyed everything or someone got seriously hurt. I had to take action. The private investigator Dad had hired before gave me a lead. My sister was back in California, working cash jobs under a fake name, staying in a rundown motel outside San Diego. She'd been making trips back to our state every few weeks, coinciding with each escalation. I had a choice: wait for her next attack or confront her directly. I chose confrontation. I told Sarah I had a business trip, not wanting to worry her more. The flight to San Diego felt like heading into battle. I'd rehearsed what I'd say, how I'd convince her to stop, but deep down, I knew words had never worked with my sister. At the motel, I knocked on her door for 5 minutes before she answered. She looked worse than before, gaunt and paranoid, eyes dark darting past me to check if I was alone. Her room was chaos, walls covered with photos of our family, my business, Sarah. Red string connected them like some conspiracy theorist's fever dream. She laughed when she saw my shock. Surprised? This is what you drove me to. This is what happens when you steal someone's life. I hadn't stolen anything, I told her. She'd destroyed her own life with her choices. But she wasn't listening, already ranting about how I'd turned our parents against her, how I'd sabotaged her job in LA, how everything bad that had happened was my fault. I tried to reason with her, even offered to help her get professional help, find her a job somewhere far away if she'd just stop the harassment. She pretended to consider it, then smiled. You know what? You're right. I should stop. I should move on. Let me pack my things and we can go. I was stupid enough to believe her. As she threw clothes into a bag, I relaxed slightly, thinking maybe this nightmare was ending. Then I saw her pull something from under the mattress. The knife caught the light as she spun toward me. I barely got my arm up in time, the blade slicing through my jacket and into my forearm. We struggled, knocking over furniture, her screaming that I'd ruined everything. I managed to push her away and run for the door, blood streaming down my arm. She chased me into the parking lot, still wielding the knife, screaming threats. Other motel guests called the police, and within minutes, sirens filled the air. She tried to run, but didn't get far. I sat on the curb, pressing my jacket against the wound, watching officers put her in handcuffs. Even then, she was screaming that I'd set her up, that I'd attacked her, that everyone would see the truth. At the hospital, getting stitches, I called Dad. He and Mom immediately started the drive back, cutting their trip short. Sarah flew out that night, crying when she saw my bandaged arm. The police took my statement, and with multiple witnesses and my defensive wounds, the truth was clear. My sister was charged with assault with a deadly weapon and stalking across state lines. This time, there was no family lawyer, no mom begging for leniency. She'd burned those bridges. The public defender got her a deal. 3 years in prison with mandatory psychiatric treatment. At sentencing, she still insisted I was the real criminal, that the system was corrupt, that she'd get revenge when she got out. The judge added an extra year for the threats. With my sister finally locked away, life slowly returned to normal. The business recovered, employees felt safe again, and Sarah and I worked through the trauma together. Mom and Dad resumed their travels after staying for the trial, though they were more subdued now. The reality of what their daughter had become weighed on them. I thought prison might change her, that forced therapy might break through her delusions. But her letters from inside showed no growth, just more blame and promises of retribution. I stopped reading them, had them forwarded directly to our lawyer as evidence for the restraining order we'd need when she got out. 2 years into her sentence, I got a call from the prison. There'd been an incident. My sister had attacked another inmate who she claimed was spying on her for me. She'd fashioned a weapon from a toothbrush, nearly unalived the woman. More charges, more time added. Any hope of her getting early release vanished. Mom broke down when she heard, finally accepting that her daughter was beyond help. The golden child she'd protected and enabled had become a violent criminal, while the son she'd once told should have been aborted was the only family she had left. The irony was bitter for everyone. Sarah and I got married in a small ceremony. My parents there, but the sister of the groom's side conspicuously empty. We didn't send an invitation to the prison. As I watched Sarah walk down the aisle, I thought about how different this day could have been with a normal family. A sister who was actually happy for my success, instead of consumed by jealousy. But you can't choose your family, only how you respond to them. The business continued to grow. I opened 2 new locations, hired excellent managers, and even started a program to help former inmates find work. My way of believing people could change, even if my sister couldn't. Dad was proud, Mom was supportive, and Sarah was pregnant with our first child. Life was good, but always with that shadow lurking, because I knew she'd get out eventually. The restraining order was just paper, and paper hadn't stopped her before. But I refused to live in fear. I'd built something strong, a business, a marriage, a life, and I wouldn't let her take that away. Not again. When she got out in 5 years, maybe 7 with her additional charges, I'd be ready. Security systems, legal protections, and most importantly, a family that stood together instead of enabling destruction. She'd taught us that lesson the hard way. The last letter I opened from her before stopping altogether was different from the others. No threats, no blame, just one line: you haven't won yet. I threw it away and went home to Sarah, to our life, to everything I'd built while she rotted in a cell of her own making. Because I had won, not through manipulation or lies, but by refusing to let her poison define my life. The golden child had fallen, and from her ashes, our family had risen stronger. But I knew this wasn't over. It never would be. Not really. Some people can't let go, can't move on, can't accept responsibility. My sister was one of them. So I prepared, I protected what mattered, and I lived my life. Because that's what you do when you can't fix someone. You fix yourself and guard against their damage. The next chapter would come when she got out. But for now, there was peace. Hard won and carefully maintained. And that was enough. The peace lasted exactly 3 years and 4 months. I was in my office reviewing quarterly reports when the call came from the prison. My sister had been released early for good behavior. The warden assured me they'd notified local authorities about the restraining order, but we both knew how little that meant to someone like her. I called Sarah immediately, told her to pick up our daughter Lily from daycare and go to her parents' house. Then I called Dad, who was somewhere in Oregon with Mom. They needed to know she was out. Within a week, strange things started happening again. Our mailbox was stuffed with job applications from my sister, all listing me as a reference. When employers called, I had to explain the situation, watching potential business relationships sour. She'd found a new angle, making me look petty and vindictive for refusing to help family. The applications kept coming, dozens every day, until I had to change our business phone number. Sarah found a woman following her at the grocery store, pretending to shop, but always in the next aisle. When confronted, the woman claimed she was writing an article about successful successful family businesses and wanted to interview us. Sarah got her license plate, and our investigator traced it to a rental under my sister's new alias. She was testing our boundaries, seeing how close she could get without technically violating the restraining order. The escalation came through our employees. 3 different managers reported being approached by a woman claiming to be my estranged sister, telling them sob stories about how I'd stolen her inheritance. She offered them money to provide information about our operations, client lists, anything that could damage the business. 2 of them came to me immediately. The third, a new hire named Alex, took the bait. I discovered Alex's betrayal when confidential bid information for a major contract ended up in our competitor's hands. We lost the deal, and when I confronted Alex, he broke down and admitted my sister had paid him $5,000. I fired him and filed charges, but my sister had been careful. The money came through anonymous transfers. Their meetings happened in places without cameras. Alex's testimony alone wasn't enough. Mom called crying one night. My sister had shown up at their new beach house while Dad was out getting groceries. She'd stood at the gate, not technically on the property, just staring at the house. When Mom went outside, my sister had smiled and waved like nothing had happened, then walked away. The security footage showed her circling the neighborhood for hours before and after, memorizing their routines. I hired round-the-clock security for my parents and increased protection for Sarah and Lily. The expense was crushing, eating into our profits, which I suspected was part of her plan. She couldn't destroy the business directly, so she'd bleed it dry through security costs. Every employee now required background checks, every delivery was monitored, every contract scrutinized for potential sabotage. Then she got creative. Food inspectors showed up at our warehouses, citing anonymous complaints. Building inspectors found sudden violations that required expensive fixes. The health department received reports of contamination that proved false, but cost us days of productivity. Each inspection was legitimate, each complaint had to be investigated, and she stayed completely invisible behind the anonymity. Sarah reached her breaking point when Lily's preschool called about a woman claiming to be her aunt trying to pick her up. The school followed protocol and refused, but my sister had stood outside taking photos until security arrived. That night, Sarah packed bags for her and Lily. She wasn't leaving me, she insisted, just needed space to think, time away from the constant fear. I watched them drive away, understanding but devastated. The next morning, I found my sister waiting in the parking garage at work. She stood by the elevator, technically in a public space where the restraining order didn't apply. I could have turned around, but I was tired of running. I approached slowly, keeping my distance, hand on my phone, ready to call police. She looked healthier than in prison, had clearly been planning this campaign for years. She spoke first, her voice calm and reasonable, the manipulation more refined after years of forced therapy. She didn't want to hurt anyone, she claimed, just wanted what was fair, half the business, since she was family too. She'd stop everything, sign whatever papers I wanted if I just gave her what she deserved. The therapy had taught her new tactics, how to frame her demands as reasonable requests, how to play the victim more convincingly. I recorded everything on my phone as she laid out her terms. She wanted an executive position, equal partnership, access to all accounts. In exchange, she'd leave my family alone, stop the harassment, disappear from our lives except for monthly board meetings. She presented it like a business proposal, had even prepared documents. The old violent rage was hidden under a veneer of cold calculation. I told her no, that she'd never be part of the business, that she needed to accept the consequences of her choices. Her mask slipped for just a moment, eyes flashing with the familiar fury before she regained control. She smiled and said, I'd change my mind when the cost became too high. Then she walked away, leaving me shaking with anger and fear. That afternoon, our biggest client called an emergency meeting. They'd received a package detailing my sister's conviction, her relationship to the company, suggesting we were involved in money laundering for her criminal activities. The client was nervous, considering pulling their contract. I spent hours showing financial records, explaining the situation, barely salvaging the relationship, but the damage was done. Trust eroded. I called Dad that night, and we made a decision. We couldn't keep playing defense, couldn't let her control our lives through fear. We needed to go on offense, but legally, carefully. Dad still had connections from decades in business, including a forensic accountant who specialized in financial crimes. If my sister was paying people, renting cars, living somewhere, she had to have money from somewhere. The accountant found what we needed within 2 weeks. My sister had been running online scams during her prison time, using contraband phones to con people out of money through fake charity websites. She'd built a network of accounts under false names, moving money through cryptocurrency and offshore accounts. It was sophisticated but sloppy in places, the arrogance of someone who thought she was smarter than everyone else. We compiled everything and took it to the FBI. Wire fraud across state lines, money laundering, identity theft. The charges stacked up quickly. They'd been investigating similar scams but hadn't connected them to one person. Our evidence broke the case wide open. Within days, they had warrants for her arrest and were freezing her accounts. My sister must have had sources because she knew they were coming. The harassment stopped abruptly. No more packages or inspections or stalking. For 3 days, nothing. I started to hope she'd fled the country, disappeared forever. Then Sarah called screaming. Lily was gone. She'd been in the backyard at Sarah's parents' house, playing while Sarah watched from the kitchen. 2 minutes, maybe 3, and she was gone. The police responded immediately. Amber Alert issued. FBI involved given the circumstances. I drove like a madman to Sarah's parents' house, found her collapsed on the lawn, her mother holding her. Every parent's worst nightmare, made worse because we knew who had taken her. The security cameras showed my sister lifting Lily over the fence, Lily going willingly with her aunt she'd never met, but who must have seemed friendly. The next 4 hours were the longest of my life. Police tracked my sister's rental car through traffic cameras, following her north toward the state line. She was smart enough to avoid main highways, sticking to back roads, but not smart enough to ditch the car. They found it abandoned at a rest stop, no sign of her or Lily. Then a trucker called in, reporting a woman with a child hitchhiking, the child crying. State police intercepted them 50 miles from the border. My sister had dyed her hair, changed clothes, but Lily was unharmed, just scared and wanting her mommy. My sister didn't resist arrest, just smiled as they cuffed her. Later, the prosecutor would play her interrogation video at trial. She claimed she was protecting Lily from me, that I was the real danger, that she was saving her niece from growing up in a toxic environment. The trial was swift. Kidnapping, violating restraining order, wire fraud, money laundering, the list went on. Her previous convictions meant no leniency this time. 25 years minimum, no possibility of early release. As they led her away, she looked at me one last time. No rage, no tears, just a blank stare that promised this wasn't over. But for now, it was. Sarah came home with Lily the day after the verdict. We spent weeks in family therapy, helping Lily process what happened, rebuilding our sense of security. The business recovered slowly, clients reassured by the resolution. Mom and Dad continued their travels but stayed closer to home. We all carried the scars, but we were healing. 5 years have passed now. Lily's in 3rd grade, doesn't remember much about that day. Sarah and I had another child, a son we named after my father. The business has expanded to 3 states, employing over 200 people. We still have security measures, still stay vigilant, but the fear has faded to background noise. My sister sends letters sometimes, forwarded through lawyers. I don't read them anymore, just file them away in case we need evidence again. Mom tried visiting her once, came back crying, said the person in that cell wasn't her daughter anymore, maybe never was. Dad refuses to acknowledge she exists. The golden child is now just inmate number 38,847, and we're finally free. Last month, a young woman applied for our internship program. During the interview, she mentioned growing up with a narcissistic parent, how she'd had to cut contact to save herself. I hired her on the spot. She reminds me that breaking cycles is possible, that people can choose to be better than their worst influences. My sister chose differently, but that was her choice, not ours. The family business continues to thrive, built on trust and integrity instead of manipulation and lies. Mom and Dad celebrated their 40th anniversary last week, their marriage stronger for surviving the storm. Sarah and I are planning our own future, maybe another child, definitely more adventures. We earned this peace through pain, but it's ours now, and no one can take it away. Sometimes I drive past the exit for the prison where she's held, but I never stop. That chapter is closed. That person is gone from our lives. She wanted to destroy us, but instead, she freed us from the cycle of enabling and excuses. We learned to protect ourselves, to value peace over toxic loyalty. The price was high, but the lesson was worth it. Family isn't about blood, it's about choice, and we choose each other every single day, building something real on the ashes of her destruction.